Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So obviously the hockey world was pretty shocked this morning when Vladimir Tarasenko was traded from the Ottawa Senators to the Florida Panthers for a 2025 third-round pick and a 2024 fourth-round pick that could become a 2026 third-round pick if the Florida Panthers go on to win the Stanley Cup. A pretty lackluster return. This kind of materialized out of nowhere, like 30 minutes out. There was talks that were intensified. Then we got the trade, and then obviously the return to follow. And yeah, this is a very disappointing return for the Senators. When you apply context, it does make some sense. But when you compare it to last night's deal of Anthony Mantha for a second-round pick and fourth-round pick, despite Mantha having a higher cap hit at half retained 2.85, as well as just being the worst player compared to Vladimir Tarasenko. I don't think I'm shocked with that. It is very disappointing for the Ottawa Senators. Now, with the additional context of the fact that he had a full no-move clause, he basically determined where he wanted to go, and apparently he has family in Florida, so he kind of bullied his way to the Florida Panthers, like no movement clause, if you know what that is. You can pick. You don't have to get traded. Like he decides if he's going to get traded, where he's going to get traded to. He needs to approve any trade that goes down. So the Ottawa Senators really didn't have that much leverage, but even still, man, a third and a fourth round pick is just such a bad deal for a guy that has 41 points in 57 games this year, on pace for around 25 goals, 59 assists if he played the full season with the Senators. This is just rough. For the Florida Panthers, this is obviously a fantastic deal. I would give the Panthers legitimately like an A+ on this. We're going to dive into Tarasenko, how he fits on the team going forward. For the Senators, I initially gave him a D. I think that is a little bit hard considering the no movement clause. I'd probably say a C, C-. It is still very underwhelming. But when looking at this from the Florida Panthers perspective, you got to think that Bill Zito kind of learned from his mistakes when it came to the 2022 deadline when he ended up trading for Ben Sherratt for a first, fourth, and a decent prospect. Compare that to Tarasenko, a third and a fourth, who gives a shit, as well as going out and getting a Claude Giroux, trading Owen Tippett, who's been fantastic since, a first-round pick, and another third that turned into Denver Barkey. Bill Zito really exploited the market here. He identified that Tarasenko would want to go to the Florida Panthers, obviously, and he would have a very small list of potential teams. So to only give up a third and a fourth round pick is fantastic work for him, especially when you consider that the Florida Panthers still have $3.1 million in deadline cap space, which is enough to take on a Gensel at $3 million half retained. A Hannafin would be around $2.5 million. So he only gives up a third and a fourth. He doesn't have a ton of picks to work with, don't get me wrong. He doesn't have a first or second this year, a first next year, but he can still get very active at this year's deadline when looking at the cap space and the overall picks that the Florida Panthers have to work with. So this was a fantastic little primer for a deal. I think they are going to do something else going forward, considering they need to go all in, considering they are probably going to finish first in the entire NHL, have such a deep team. Now, when it comes to Tarasenko on the team, not that good defensively anymore, never really good defensively at all, but he still is an elite play driver, especially coming off the rush. He's able to finish those chances, and I think with the Florida Panthers, they have so many good, reliable two-way players that I think of Tarasenko, even though he doesn't play a lot of defense, he's more an aggressive offensive player getting up in the rush. I think considering they have basically two solid defensive players on every single line that they roll out, I think Tarasenko is a really good fit in terms of boosting your overall top nine, getting more goal scoring while not really caring too much about your defensive forwards. They're fine defensively. When it comes to their lines, I think he probably slots best on that second line left wing instead of a Nick Cousins right now. He did play primarily left wing, I believe, on the Ottawa Senators, but I was looking at it earlier, the line combinations of the Senators. So I think if you roll out Tarasenko on that second line left wing, that is a complete top nine. Before this trade, I really liked their top six, especially when they moved up Rodriguez to that first line and then bumped Verhaeghe down. They had probably the best top six in the entire NHL. Both lines were top 10 in goals percentage and expected goals percentage. But adding a Tarasenko, especially at that price, just really overall boosts their depth in their top nine and makes them a complete team, in my opinion, considering the defense core is looking very good, and they might still add to that. With Bobrovsky and net has, like a 9.16 and 9.18 this season. He's playing fantastic, as well as being great in the playoffs last year. So when looking at the Florida Panthers, not the Ottawa Senators, when looking at the Florida Panthers right now, I think it is, especially on paper, without a doubt, that they're the favorite in the Eastern Conference. They've been the most dominant team, as well as making a massive move like this, acquiring a middle six guy for basically nothing. So unless the Rangers go out and do something, the Leafs go out and the Bruins, the Panthers, I think right now it is the Hurricanes, not the Panthers. I said the Panthers. Panthers obviously have done something. I think it is the Panthers conference to kind of run through. Now, obviously, once if they potentially get to a Stanley Cup final, there's going to be teams like Vancouver, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Dallas waiting, Colorado waiting for them. That's a different debate, but I do think that they should rightfully so be heavy favorites. And when looking at a potential Hanifin and Gensel trade going forward, you could maybe package that 2026 first round pick as well as an Anton Lundell or Mackie Samskovich. That could maybe be enough to get it done. I think that they would probably sign. They would like to sign Gensel long term. Is that realistic? I'm not too sure. Tarasenko is obviously rental. That's, you gave up a third and a fourth. You hope that he has 14 points in his final 20 games and then plays to that level around in the playoffs as well. It's not that big of a deal, but this is a fantastic deal for the Florida Panthers. I would give them, again, an A+. It's fantastic. They completely took advantage of the situation. It's kind of similar to the Alex DeBrincat trade going to Detroit. Not that Yzerman did a great job on it, but it also kind of fell into his lap in the sense that DeBrincat was from Michigan. Same thing goes with this Tarasenko trade. He wanted to go to Florida. Apparently, Tampa and the Florida Panthers were the two teams that he was kind of willing to waive his no movement clause. So it fell into Bill Zito's lap. He didn't overpay. He underpaid severely, in fact. And as a result, the Florida Panthers are probably the favorites in the Eastern Conference. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? I'm getting notifications on my phone that an Oilers Adam Henrique deal might be in the works right now. So you might see that video when you're watching this video on the recommended page, and I'll be seeing the next one. This deadline is looking absolutely crazy. I love it.